ever. I actually was wondering if oil prices might be even higher today. Nobody's really talking about Iran this morning because of what went on at the correspondents' dinner. The king is rolling into town. But remember, when we left here on Friday, the whole story was that the president canceled the trip to Islamabad for everybody. Witkoff, Kushner staying right here in the U.S. And I had to note, Tom Kloza, you know, the oil analyst at Gulf who joins us frequently, says this makes the 6 p.m. opening for the oil trade Sunday must-see TV. Since a moderate advance higher, in the meantime, U.S. gas price is likely to hit new 2026 high before April ends. So there's still time for that to happen. And by the way, we're at 411. I'm just checking quickly, AAA national average. So look, watching Brent move ever closer to $110 is not good, but some thought we might have an even bigger spike today. So we'll keep tabs on all of this for you as we make our way through the Monday edition. Thank you for joining us here on Bloomberg Radio. The headline on the Terminal D.C. dinner shooting spurs ballroom DHS funding push. Never let a crisis go to waste. And we'll see if it changes the conversation about either of these things. But you heard the president right off the bat talking about when he got back to the White House from the Hilton, still in the talks. He's at the podium with Kash Patel and Todd Blanche behind him. He says this makes the case for the ballroom. And now some lawmakers do want that to become part of the reconciliation bill that would also help to reopen the Department of Homeland Security. This thing has gotten so messy, we need to talk to Nathan just to remind us every week about how it works. And in case you're wondering, my friend Nathan, America's dad, was with us on Saturday night when all this stuff went down. And, you know, a lot of people are feeling weird about this morning, and I can't blame any of them for it. I understand that entirely. But when I walked by Nathan's desk, leave it to America's dad with the voice from Chicago, the understated humor of Nathan Dean. He said, well, that was a Saturday night. And sometimes you need to laugh, too, a little bit, guys. And so I appreciate you for that. How you doing this morning?
Good.
Good to see you.
Yep.
Did you get out of there at a decent hour?
You know, I had caffeined and taken a nap, so I was expecting to be up till like 3 a.m.
That's right, yeah.
I was home
so
by 11 o'clock. So.
Watching TV. They're not normally like that. I'm sorry that was your first one. But it was nice to see you all tuxed up and, you know, everybody was dressed up, I guess, with nowhere to go, as it turned out. But I do wonder if this whole fiasco does light a fire under this DHS argument. Every lawmaker I've seen on TV since that very moment has said this is why we need to reopen DHS at a time of war, a heightened terror threat here at home. Does it move the needle?
I think it moves the needle in terms of this reconciliation package. I don't think it moves the needle in terms of getting the DHS funded past this week. Because as a reminder, you know, the one big beautiful bill money that they're using to fund DHS, they said there's an expiration date, and that expiration date is most likely the end of this week.
Yep.
Now, I don't think you're going to see Democrats come back to the board and say, look, because of this, we're going to change our position here. Mm-hmm. So there's really two scenarios this plays out. One is, does the House accept the Senate deal that's already been passed with Democratic support? And I'm not exactly sure that happens. But the second scenario is they push for reconciliation to move even quicker. President Trump says he wants it done by June 1st. Even though they've been authorized up for $140 billion, we still anticipate this to be about $75 billion. Okay. I don't think the ballroom gets included in that, but even so, if it does, there's not an investing angle on that. But,
correct.
You know, but I think you're going to see the $75 billion package, and I think this certainly gives the Republicans the unification that they need to get that bill over the line.
Okay, interesting. When you look at the lineup here for this week, it's a doozy. I mean, if you're Speaker Johnson, see the picture of him being whisked out of there on Saturday night in a full gate? Forgive me here. I'm looking at the list of deadlines that include FISA 702. A vote on the 3-year extension is set for Tuesday. The immigration enforcement budget blueprint that we're talking about would be Wednesday, the Farm Bill Thursday. We're doing all that this week?
You know, the Farm Bill is the one that I would say was just pushed off. In fact, I was just talking about this with a client. The reason with the Farm Bill is that when it comes to the Farm Bill in particular, you have now the Republican establishment versus the Maha form of the Republican Party over this provision that actually limits the amount of lawsuits against pesticides. Okay. So I think the Farm Bill gets pushed off. When it comes to FISA, look, I don't think the situation has changed all that much in terms of like, look, the shooting over the weekend certainly gives President Trump another talking point, but I don't think they've come with a solution that gets that unification amongst the Republican Party. So I could see FISA slipping.
Wow.
The one thing that I would say is that we sort of sitting on a good ground at the moment in terms of seeing some momentum here is Kevin Warsh's nomination. I mean, Senator Tom Tillis said over the weekend that he's dropped that block, so I wouldn't be surprised to see the Senate Banking Committee to try to push that out ASAP.
Really interesting. You see how he did that, CC? He knew I was going to bring it up. Tom Tillis, this would have been the screamer on a Sunday morning, Meet the Press. It was such a big deal, exclusive, under embargo. They did it Friday and waited till Sunday to play it, not knowing that it would not be the lead story come Sunday morning, but played it. They did. Here's the senator from North Carolina dropping his opposition to the confirmation vote.
I am prepared, and with the assurances from the Department of Justice that the case is completely and fully settled, that the appeal would only be used to potentially abrogate or change the ruling for administrative purposes, not as a basis for reopening the investigation. I am prepared to move on with the confirmation of Mr. Warsh. I think he's going to be a great Fed chair.
All right, we got to it there. So, boy, that didn't come easily. Now, do we get a vote this week? How quickly can they do this?
I don't think you'll see a vote this week. I think Senate Banking Committee will try and do the vote this week, and then you'll have a vote.
That's what I mean, though. Yeah, committee vote.
Yeah, I think you'll see a committee vote this week. I mean, Senator Scott hasn't said anything yet. I mean, look, logistically, they have plenty of time to get this done by May 15th.
Sure.
And that was the question we were getting from clients.
Right.
The other question we're getting here is, what does Jerome Powell do past May 15th?
Are they really calling you to ask that?
Yes.
Like, do you make an investment decision based on what Powell's going to do with the rest of his career?
The question is whether or not President Trump gets another opportunity to name another individual at the Board of Governors. Because if Jerome Powell decides to stick around, that prevents President Trump from naming somebody else.
Understood.
So, you only have so many board seats. So what we think here happens is because even though the investigation was moved from the DOJ to the Federal Reserve IG here, Judge Jeanine Pirro, the D.C. attorney, said, that they could reopen it. And President Trump was on the tarmac just this past weekend at in front of Air Force One saying he didn't think the investigation was over. So I think what happens here is that Jerome Powell sticks around at the Fed, and he stays a little bit longer, and that prevents President Trump from naming another individual to the board, which, given the influence of the FOMC and given how relationships work, and I'm not a monetary policy, so I don't want to analyze, so I'm not going there. But it does offer opportunities for President Trump to try and fire Powell later, and the Lisa Cook case could be released as soon as Wednesday at 10 a.m.
All right, so wow, you just threw a bunch of stuff in the water there. That's fascinating. Does Powell talk about this on Wednesday in the news conference?
I don't think
When he's asked about his tenure, he went pretty far last time.
I think he'll keep it very open-minded. He'll say things like, I'm open-minded. I'm still, very much interested in resolving this to the process to see this through type of thing. But come May 15th, if Jerome Powell's gone, it means that, actor, Stephen Myron, Dr. Myron, that's the slot for Kevin Warsh here. So what I will say, though, is that when the Lisa Cook case comes back, and our analyst Elliot Stein says pretty confidently that he thinks Lisa Cook is going to win, anytime you see type of True Social posts saying, I'm going to fire Jerome Powell, chances are Jerome Powell would immediately sue back. And if the Supreme Court case hasn't come back by then, we still think he has a decent shot of sticking around.
Oh, my God. All right. So let's say Supreme Court does show up by then. Lisa Cook wins the case. Jay Powell goes home, or does he want to stay there just to be a thorn in Trump's side for a little longer so there isn't another Myron or somebody who joins the board?
Honestly, I think he just wants to stick around to have that sort of
some confirmation.
That confirmation, and also the ability for the Federal Reserve to, if there were a situation that would pop up, having the backing of the Federal Reserve. Because even though, Kevin Warsh at that time would be the chairman, I do think that there is some sort of unification amongst the governors that, maybe not want to be proactively fighting against the president or anything. I mean, you would never see that. But, there's some sort of unification amongst the governors here that, the process has to play out and so forth like that.
Wait, if Tillis is on board now, it's done. I mean, we know that everyone supports Warsh, at least the Republicans who have the votes to do this. Would there be a Democrat who peels off and votes to confirm on the committee?
I'm not exactly sure. I mean,
Unlikely.
everybody's been asking about Senator Fetterman.
Yeah.
He wasn't there for the nomination hearing. I was in the pantry and I missed it. But, I don't think he was there. And so, one of the things I would just say here is that, like, at the end of the day, he's got the votes amongst the Republican side. So it doesn't matter.
It would be a pretty tough vote, I'm guessing, for any Democrat. You think so? CC says, yeah, maybe Fetterman. We'll watch when this happens. How long were you in the ballroom? How did you get out of there?
Security officer told us fairly quickly to get out, and then
so you left pretty quickly?
Yep.
We were there for like an hour waiting for this thing to unfold.
Yeah, no. So we were outside pretty quickly, and
then you got outside. They didn't let you cross the street, and you had to walk halfway home, right?
I got a very lovely walk through Kalorama and got to see a lot of great, beautiful homes.
Beautiful homes up there. Yes, indeed. We did the same thing. The fact that anybody got to an after party that night, did you, or did you ended up going home?
I went to Taco Bell.
Good job. Yeah. All right. See, America's dad. Bloomberg Intelligence. Would you go next year?
Absolutely.
Do it again? Yeah, okay. We'll see if the president does. I don't know if... No, we didn't, by the way. CC is asking if we ate. And I'm telling you, there's a story there. There were 2,900 hot dinners that were about to come out in that ballroom. A lot of them like filet. Usually they give you filet of surf and turfs because they figure you're not going to eat one of them. They had all of these, they had all the trays up, and then... I hope they went to a charity. What happened to the 2,900 steak dinners, guys? We want to know. Let us know at the Hilton if you can figure this out. There's a great Bloomberg story in there somewhere. And I hope some charity, as I said yesterday, is overflowing right now with wonderful food. Nathan, thank you. Friend of the program. Find him on the terminal and online. And if you subscribe to this program, you'll get Nathan's Monday briefing as well on the podcast. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. We'll assemble our political panel next. Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis with a lot to think about and talk about after this weekend in Washington. I'm glad you're with us here on the Monday edition of Balance of Power. This is Bloomberg.